Nikola Tesla once stated that crystals were living beings. It's a subject that fascinates me because I have experienced an interesting phenomena while studying their effects on plants. I was first introduced to the vibrational properties of quartz while attending a music convention in North Carolina. It's for experts in digital and analog musical instruments, but my reason for attending this event was to interview an expert that specializes in sound, light, and electromagnetic field frequency machines. I met with August Worley during Moog Fest to visit the factory that produces Moog musical instruments. August started his professional career as a keyboard technician for the popular musical group Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Well, then I formed Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and what I would like is a Moog synthesizer.
I had found out that Bob Moog was looking to create another synthesizer, and I showed him what I had done for Keith Emerson, and he was very impressed, and so he had invited me to become his principal engineer at Moog Music. We talk about frequency and waveforms with the kids in our program, how these waveforms actually feel. What we're going to talk about today is how we make sound. What happens when you add more oscillators, it makes the sound richer. So I'm going to add another oscillator. Sustain, how long the sound will stay there, and then there's a little thing on here called release. So notice how that sounds differently. This is very mellow. But then as we go to a sawtooth wave, it sounds a little brassier. So you see they kind of look like a sawtooth. Basically what Bob did was take laboratory equipment out of the laboratory and put it in the hands of the musician. Working at Moog as an engineer with Bob Moog, I approached Bob one day and said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could do like an electronic singing bowl? And he thought about it and he said, you should do that. And so that sort of gave me the impetus and sort of planted the seed for me to carry forth this idea of what would an electronic singing bowl look like that also incorporated physical vibration and had light associated with it and also did an electromagnetic resonance. There's a physioacoustic transducer at the base of the instrument. The Paradigm is a combined sound, light, physioacoustic, and electromagnetic resonance instrument. The crystals come into it because I wanted to have as broad a spectrum of resonant modalities in the instrument as possible. Well, one of the tones in Paradigm, it's actually the third chakra tone, has been found to stimulate the thalamocortical loop in the human brain. What that does is the thalamocortical loop actually generates a sync pulse that coordinates all of the flow and processing between our spine and between our brain functioning. Why do cats not display the same hip dysplasia and some of the other connective tissue disorders that dogs do? And the answer to that is because they purr. They are little physioacoustic generators, and they have an innate ability to know how to heal people. They like to climb on people, and they seem to have an understanding of when somebody's in pain, and they go right to that area and they purr. The American Veterinarian Association has stated that the reason that cats don't have connective tissue disorders is because they do purr. That's physioacoustic therapy right there. A beat frequency is a difference frequency between two tone generators. So in this way we can use a tone generator that is very close in frequency to another tone generator. The difference frequency will be 10 Hertz, 8 Hertz, 7.8 Hertz. This instrument is designed to resonate the body, and by inducing a 40 Hertz tone through Paradigm, into the human body, you can actually help to stimulate people. Longer waveforms at the bottom of the chakra scale, if you will, and they get shorter as you move up because the human body actually becomes less massive as you move up through the chakra system. It takes a longer waveform to resonate our hips and our big leg muscles than it does to resonate our throat.
August Worley's expertise as an inventor, teacher, and service technician of analog music frequency generators has also made him a gifted individual in the repair of electromagnetic medical devices. The same wave shapes that are used to synthesize analog sound to produce different tonal qualities are also used to treat many conditions within the human body. Sine, triangle, sawtooth, square, and pulsed waves from analog music frequency generators are fed to Tesla voice coils. They interact with permanent magnets to produce sound vibrations. For medical devices, flat spiral Tesla coils are embedded into thin pads and are energized by medical frequency generators. Silent electromagnetic fields are evenly dispersed throughout the surface of the mat to treat the entire body. For targeted applications, single Tesla coils can be inserted into pillows and placed on or under areas of the body. Instead of playing a keyboard to change the musical notes, oscillators inside the frequency generator can be programmed to sweep through the frequencies or pulse magnetic fields at predetermined intervals. These fields induce tiny electric fields into the body to regenerate weak or damaged cells and energize healthy cells so they function at their full voltage potential. These frequency machines can emulate the Earth's natural magnetic fields that are vital for our survival. We naturally ground and recharge our body when we walk barefoot through Earth's magnetic fields on the piezoelectric quartz crystal sand. The paradigm vibrates the crystal capstone to activate its piezoelectric effect. When you resonate quartz crystal, a subtle electric field emanates into the air and is absorbed by all living things and other quartz crystals. I decided to purchase a paradigm and a quartz crystal singing bowl to study in our laboratory. That purchase eventually provided me with the missing key I needed to fully understand the healing fields of nature.
ここでトロフィーっていうのが出てくるんですけれど、戦車の周りにこういう感じで360度の、フィールドを持ちます。レーダーの、射程ということですね。でレーダーで見つけたこういうロケット弾をこの機銃の射程のギリギリのその境界で壊してしまおうという。ただしこのトロフィーシステムには、爆破することはできるんですけれど、外からやってくるミサイルの、運動を止めることは不可能なんですよ。ですから弾自体は向かっていきますけれど、その火薬の部分はそこで叩くことができるんじゃないかというふうにして、イスラエルが米国向けにこれを売ろうとしてます。これはFOX テレビなんです。先ほどと一緒でちょっと不鮮明ですけれど、タンクの周りを覆ってその射程のところで、ロケット弾を撃ち落とそうというシステムを紹介しています。FOX はここでフォースフィールドっていう名前をつけてますけれど、本当にここに壁があるかのように、あるところで爆発して砲弾だけが突き抜けていってしまうということから、バリアのように見えるこれですね。まず最初にテスラの世界システムというのがありまして、テスラが何を考えていたかというと、これはニコラ・テスラ、磁力の、開発者、磁力の単位の開発者ですけれど、いろんな研究を1930 1890年代から1900年代、初頭にかかるまでかなり、研究してまして、飛行機や船が電気タワー、これですね、タワーの電場の中に入るとそこに高エネルギーの、電子が流れて、侵入者を撃退するというシステムがあります。でテスラシールド、これを例えばこういう街の上空に貼ったらこんな感じに見えるよというのがこの写真です。実際これが本当にテスラシールドか単なるこの夕日を浴びてる虹なのか、これはちょっとわからないんですけれど、例えばアメリカからこうミサイルをこう撃ってきたら、ロシアがそういう装置を持ってここにテスラシールドでバリアを設けたり、バリアのようなそのプラズマのボールを大気圏外に作ったりということで、ミサイルを防衛できるよというシステムの話です。でここで打ち上げるロシアのテスラシールドの機械をテスラ局射砲と言いますけれど、この局射砲によって大都市のコミュニケーションネットワークも壊れますし、そこに侵入しようとする物体には数百万ボルトの衝撃が打ち込まれますので、ほとんどこの、バリアというかこのプラズマの向こう側には行けないということになります。ここで爆発するということです。で実際この大陸を挟んでこの世界システムと呼ばれているテスラの、コイルから発信したエネルギーを大気圏外の電離層に打ち上げると、電離層が激しく振動を受けて非常に高いエネルギー状態に達します。そうすると電離層が一種の鏡のようになります。要はそのたくさんの高速の微粒子、電離しているイオンとかがたくさん集まってきます。簡単に言うと、大きな池に、たくさんの鯉がいるとします。そこに餌を投げたら鯉がわーっと寄ってきますけど、その状態が、このイオン化された大気だと考えてください。上空100キロ以上が電離層になります。それ以下が、大気になります。でロシアが開発したと言われているこのスカラービームですね、このテスラの世界システムを横にしたような形なんですが、2つの、球状の物体からこのスカラービームというビームが出ております。でテスラの、テスラコイルからは、こういう高周波以外にこういうテスラ波が出てるんじゃないかと予測されて軍事的に利用されたのがこのスカラービームの発生装置で、実際このビームを交差させるとこういう半球状のドームを作ったりするということで、航空機が来たりロケットが来たり核爆弾が来てもこのドームの中は大丈夫という発想になっておりますけれど、本当にこのドームの中の人が生きていられるかというのはちょっと疑問です。ですからそういう膜のようなものを大気圏外に、たくさん多層にやりますと、いくつかのものがぶち当たっても通過してくるものがありますけれど、それをさらに細かく砕いていくということで多重バリアという構想もあるみたいです。で、都市をミサイル攻撃から防御ということで、これマンハッタンですね、マンハッタン島、ここに大きなドーム状の、バリアを作ったら、外からの、攻撃は避けられるかもしれません。これは1970年代の絵なので、ここにまだツインターが立ってますアラスカの、基地にこういうアンテナ、上から見ると十字架のアンテナがありますけれど、極超音波と極超短波の、ラジオ波を空に向けて、放射するための装置が並列に並べてあります。アンテナとアンテナが近ければ近いほど非常に高精度で高い電波を発生させることができるということです。でここでは気象操作ってありますけれど、これはメキシコ湾を上昇する、上に北上していく、熱帯低気圧なんですけれど、この赤い線で示したところ、これはアラスカからこの電波を使ってこの部分で熱を発生させて水蒸気をたくさん出させて、実際こういうふうに熱帯の低気圧を、増大させたんだよという映像です。 もしこれが可能だったらその逆も可能なわけで、カトリーナを防げたんじゃないのかなと思いますけれど、もしかしたらカトリーナを太らせたのかもしれないっていう疑惑もあります。で最後に全核ミサイル消滅計画というのがあります。これは日本人の物理学者が提唱しておりますけれど、ニュートリノ放射というのを使ってます。日本にもスプリング8っていう岐阜に大きな加速器がありますけれど、ここでいろんな電子とか原子を電気的に加速して、物体にぶつけるといろんな粒子が生まれるんですけれど、粒子同士をぶつけるとニュートリノというのができます。これは東京大の物理学の先生がノーベル賞を取った上岡鉱山の地下で、ニュートリノを検出したニュートリノなんですから、これを生成して、その性質を利用して地球全体に照射すると、一部は中性子へと変化して核ミサイル内で核反応を起こして未熟爆発を起こさせるという、ことを日本の物理学者が提唱しています。これが可能ですと、日本で発生した加速器からのニュートリノを例えば北朝鮮とかソ連とか共産圏とか、はたまたアメリカの核弾頭に向けてニュートリノを打ち込んでやると、核ミサイルに入った瞬間に中性子に変わって、中性子が、核の中のプルトニウムを、核分裂させることができます。でアメリカのレイセオンという会社から日本は、先ほどの PAC3 とか SM3 を買ってます。実際その世界第一のミサイルメーカーで年2兆円を超える、売り上げ、トヨタも全然かなわないくらいの非常に大きな、軍需企業なんですが、戦後できた時にはそれほど大きな会社ではありませんでした。で軍やアメリカ合衆国政府向けの製品を売ってまして、ここの会社は電子レンジを初めて発明したことでも有名です。最後にバリアの今後について、私なりの感想なんですけれど、バリアやフォースフィールドといった未踏の技術っていうのは半世紀越しの仕事です。これは技術者に言わせると10年かそこでできるものではないです。50年以上かかります。でただしこれによって人類全体に対する社会的貢献度、これは計り知れないと思われます。もしかしたら今後訪れるであろう太陽活動、また宇宙での長期滞在、宇宙探検、宇宙旅行、洋上都市、もしくは天災から都市を守るっていうこととしてバリアが応用できるんじゃないかと思います。
What goes up must come down, right? Well, unless you've figured out a way to harness an untapped force in the universe. Enter this lab and everything you know gets tossed out the window. Welcome to the world of John Hutchison, where the improbable may just become our reality. John Hutchison has been dabbling with electricity for decades, copying the work of famed scientist Nikola Tesla, whose AC power still runs our world. Along the way, messing about with military surplus gear, John may have stumbled across one of the most amazing scientific discoveries of our age. Experimenting with radio waves and electricity led John to discover an effect which has mystified government and military scientists. It boils, it bends, it sends objects flying through the air.
I was building these replications of Tesla's old machines and found them doing fascinating things. Then this whole thing happened, this fluke kind of thing, the Hutchison effect.
This was some effect. Air squeezed out of bottles, ice drinks moving through space, drill bits levitating. An effect so convincing and so varied, it seemed impossible to fake.
In John's labs, I've actually seen levitation of rock. I've seen levitation of steel ball bearings, glass, where they will levitate. Unbelievable. I've seen electricity go right into the objects and a million pieces just fly apart.
In fact, using only 75 watts of energy, enough for a small light bulb, Hutchison made a 60-pound cannonball rise off the table. It would also fuse dissimilar materials, heat metal but not burn the wood it sat on, shatter metal as well as change its crystalline structure. This was something to write home about.
Beginning of 1980, experimenting with all the electromagnetics and electrostatic equipments I had at the time, I started to notice some very, very unusual effects, such as a room being filled up very quickly with multicolored lights, steel bars sitting on wood and not causing any fires, metal turning to jelly, things levitating and jumping off to the ceiling, or simply go up, hover, and then fall back down.
Dubbed by some as the poltergeist machine, there is no one machine, just a lot of old Army surplus gear, randomly tuned by John. No one knows how it works. John has apparently figured out the right combination of radio waves and electrical energy to create the effect. If it could be proven, its impact would be huge. You'd have to rewrite most of the science textbooks, especially the part about what goes up. And the story gets even weirder, involving both the Canadian and U.S. military intelligence.
Here we go, into my place. Canadian government seized my laboratory, which was 22 tons of equipment. I came back from Germany and moved into this place here and started my experiments again with Army surplus and Navy surplus equipment, which I got actually from warships, and bought a lot from various surplus stores in the United States and Canada, starting in 1994. And some of this equipment actually goes back to the 1940s, directional finding equipment, all kinds of neat configurations, waveforms and that, right up to 44 gigahertz. That gives me a wide range and wide spectrum of fields and that to work with.
Of course, given the potential magnitude of an effect which can turn metal into jelly and levitate objects, it wasn't long before news leaked out. In this case, to Colonel John Alexander with INSCOM, U.S. Army Intelligence, whose specialties included training people to bend metal with their minds, or PK, psychokinetic training.
Well, they had an 8mm film, and it was purported to have been taken in Canada, and it showed various items that were levitating, falling, accelerating, the breadth of materials that seemed to be affected by whatever the effect was certainly interesting, because it wasn't just metal. It clearly wasn't just some big magnet or something like that. And it was sufficiently interesting that we said, want to learn more about that. So we agreed to fund him.
Why was the Army so interested in John's effect? Well, look at all those objects going up. instead of down. They knew a hot property when they saw it. This anti-gravity could have a huge impact on military aircraft. New types of propulsion in weight-reduced planes could fly higher and faster. So Colonel Alexander and his team went to Vancouver to test John's effect.
During 1983, U.S. Army Intelligence and Los Alamos National Laboratories set me up in a large laboratory. We did 4 months of testing.
We had a team of 6 people from Army Intelligence and from Los Alamos, including myself, that came out for the demonstration.
As usual, John revved up his machines to create his electronic force field to start the effect. Exactly what happened next is still debated by the various participants.
And things started off very good, actually, because there was a whole battery of lights, fluorescent lights that lit up really bright and then exploded, and then incandescent lamps in this massive warehouse lit up.
The effects that happened always happened when we were not present, and so cannot give any first-hand evidence.
Time progressed in all these experiments. We get mirrors breaking apart, odd voltage things happening.
But Colonel Alexander had given John some metal rods he used in his psychokinetic work to test the validity of people's metal-bending claims. These rods could only be bent through extreme measures, like heating them to thousands of degrees.
Probably the most interesting was a molybdenum rod that I used in PK testing. And what had happened is he presented to me, it had a slight S-curve in the rod itself. We looked at it very carefully to see if it had been heated and gripped or something like that, and found no indication that it had. That suggested to us that there were effects that were going on.
In the end, Bob, a skeptical Los Alamos investigator, deemed the tests inconclusive. And according to this letter from Los Alamos, all documents pertaining to the Hutchison tests were destroyed.
According to Bob, the one man, things didn't work, and let's forget about it and classify it.
While officially the tests were brushed aside, Colonel Alexander has kept an open mind.
Even though nothing happened during our investigation when we were present, 5 of the 6 people present believed that it probably did happen. It just didn't happen, while we were there.
But the fact remained that the U.S. intelligence services left, apparently having written the effect off. Then on the 24th of February 1990, something strange happened. John was out of the country when his lab was forcibly seized by the Canadian government. Despite a court order to return it, John never got his equipment back. When he tried to move his experiments to Germany, the authorities there refused him permission. Months later, John heard a rumor that his brainchild was not dead and buried, but was being studied by the American military.
It was basically classified, and I've been hearing stories for years and feel now that they did get results and are replicating it at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works.
Was it a rumor, or was the largest military power on the planet experimenting with the Hutchison effect? John believes the Pentagon tests of his anti-gravity effect may have ended up at Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, home to secret U.S. military projects, including new types of super aircraft and top-secret or black ops propulsion systems. Stranger still, Nick Cook, a writer for the respected British military journal Jane's Defense Weekly, found out about John Hutchison's work through one of Lockheed Martin's top scientists.
I was at Lockheed Martin. I was with Boyd Bushman, a senior engineer there, and he showed me a film that purported to show some of John Hutchison's levitation experiments. What we saw was a saw, some nails, a hammer, household stuff. Most of them were shooting off the top of the screen. It was almost like an impulse reaction. Normally I would have kind of looked at this stuff and just thought it's somebody's idea of a practical joke. But the fact that it was being highlighted to me by somebody from Lockheed Martin as something I should be paying attention to kind of got my attention. And that was what really convinced me to go and at least have a look at what John Hutchison was doing. I'm 99% convinced that this is not a hoax. I don't think anyone knows what is going on here, but too many people have looked into it, too many people have investigated. You know, people who have my respect for me to think that it's a hoax.
Eventually, Lockheed Martin would send their own team to conduct tests. But John hasn't heard much since, and he worries about his technology being used for military purposes. Like Galileo in his time, who was imprisoned for looking too closely at stars, John and his technology have been stopped cold, shunned by mainstream science. Frustrated by his inability to bring this anti-gravity technology to the world, John spends his days gathering more Navy surplus gear for his much smaller apartment-based lab.
Oh, cool. Better try it to make sure it works.
Looks kind of great. Looks cool.
For those prone to claustrophobia, John's home is not the place to stay for drinks and a game of cards.
Living here in this space is like living inside a very cramped submarine. My girlfriends find this rather interesting and quite different. And actually I had some girlfriends stay overnight. They didn't seem to mind it. It hasn't got the best of things for feminine amenities, but they managed to tough it out, let's say. This is the shower box, I call it. Renamed the shower box, so when I come in here and after I get out of bed, I pull up my trusty navy-colored box, which contains all kinds of weird and wonderful stuff for growing hair and creams and stuff, and shaving equipment. Then I proceed to crawl into the little box there and start cupping myself with a cup of water and shave and all that. So I go into that routine and then think of what I'll be doing for the day. So what I have is this thing is on a string. It's a toy UFO. I'm going to suspend it from a string off the floor, firing energy fields at it and see if I can get it to even move.
Working on his effects research, John sees himself as more of an artist than scientist. Turning and twisting knobs like a painter. Dipping into electrical fields to access a random force field. But in this small lab, it's even less predictable than before. The saucer is moving and changing direction, but there might be other forces at work here. Colonel Alexander, who trained people in the U.S. Army Intelligence Service to bend metal using their minds, believes that John could be inadvertently creating the Hutchison effect through his own PK, or psychokinetic powers.
One of the possibilities is that the electronic fields were actually amplifying some sort of PK experience that he was having or causing to happen. It is not uncommon, if you study the whole field of poltergeist phenomena, that strange macro PK events occur and yet seem to be beyond the control of the individual who is causing it to happen.
An example of this kind of random event happened in 1989 when a visiting Vancouver news crew was setting up at John's lab to film the Hutchison effect. The target area was that yellow crate with the metal objects. But to everyone's shock, a sponge in the back of the room took off into the air and then fell back down. John didn't actually see it and was genuinely surprised.
Like that, it went up and hit the ceiling 1 second, maybe 2 seconds, and then came down.
You're kidding.
No.
Well, some time ago I was doing some testing and got into some big trouble after I levitated a toy UFO and some other objects.
Apparently, John's experiments were lifting objects in nearby homes, and the neighbors called the police.
The police came full bore in here with engineers, inspectors. They photographed all the equipments very carefully. It's almost like if you called in a cleaning crew. They didn't touch anything. It's like they made everything look neater for some strange reason.
it seems like someone in the shadows still cares what our hero is up to. Frustrated by authorities and lack of recognition, John has been spending time developing his new project, batteries that last forever, based on the somewhat bizarre zero-point energy theory. Followers of this theory believe that all physical matter floats in a sea of energy, which, if collected and converted into electrical power, could more than meet all the world's demand for energy.
I feel everything has a life force to it, because I tend to visualize that atoms are a whole universe, and when they're combining one atom to make millions, if not trillions of them, you have a piece of metal, perhaps. Every time you run your hand across a piece of metal, you're taking off several million atoms at a time.
To demonstrate how energy is everywhere, John uses rocks from his neighborhood and in 2 hours makes a zero-point battery strong enough to power a pen light.
I make sure it bonds. Almost 1/2 electron volt. This is better than a conventional battery, simply because it never runs down. So with these things, they could last approximately as long as minerals last, up to maybe 1,000 years, unknown.
Realizing his batteries could help solve the world's energy crisis, the Japanese have embraced John and funded him to build his bigger crystal-based models.
I got orders from Japan and sponsorship for me to make more of them. So the money would come through into my bank account, and indeed I made units that are actually in Hiroshima City. If you don't mind.
While various zero-point energy devices were funded by the Japanese, so far none have taken off on a mass scale. Whether building batteries or levitating objects, John Hutchison is an eccentric enigma. Of course, virtually no mainstream scientists take John or his invention seriously. But then only a little over 100 years ago, people believed it was impossible to send a radio wave across the Atlantic. Now just imagine if this backyard scientist really has discovered a primal force of nature that could transform our world.
I am only taken seriously by the military scientists. The academic scientists really don't know what to make of me. Well, to say a lot of other people too don't know what to make of me. I'm just a different person, and I'm kind of happy with myself. I don't want to try and change myself.
The greatest minds of the past left behind hidden keys to our future.
We've been looking for someone like you for a very long time.
From Disney, follow the clues to save tomorrow.
The future was running out, but we're not giving up. Buckle up!
Tomorrowland, rated PG.
Have you ever wondered what would happen if all the great thinkers decided to get together and actually change the world for the better? And the result was, well, miracles. Who are you? I'm the future. They're coming. She's full of surprises. We have to go! That place I saw, it exists? Of course it does. But if you don't come with me, it won't for much longer. Dreamers need to stick together.
Rated PG.